Well, it can't all be work. Good heavens. Half a mile off the coast of Fajardo. About 15 to, 12 to 15 knots. Slightly southeast. East-southeast, which is rare here. So it's very pleasant going downwind. I'm headed towards San Juan, but not to San Juan. No better place to get your head together, that's for sure. It'll be a lot less fun going home into the wind. The governor's mansion is exactly that way. I suppose it's a good enough time to talk philosophy. The ocean invites such ruminations. Even though it might be a fantasy, it's still a good mental exercise to recall the way the world should be. Not that it should be because I said so, but because the wisdom of the ages, and for centuries, men, usually men, took very seriously the idea of a classical education, the idea of not losing track of the most important lessons of the past, things that resonated throughout the centuries, down the decades of very, very hard-won, hard-knock, school of hard knocks kind of learning that cultures all over the world seem to conclude might be worth sort of canonizing. And that here I'm talking about ideas like the importance of whatever ruling elite exists, that they need to be guided by something greater than their own sort of foul, short-term greed, and the kinds of problems that tend to arise when that injunction is ignored. Well, you see it right now. I saw, and it's very hard to know what is true and what is not true online anymore. That is only going to worsen the problem of what AI is now going to make possible. If you think things are crazy now, I imagine it's going to be absolutely batshit before the dust settles, as it were, and whatever new cycle is coming actually finally emerges. But I saw some idiotic statement from, I guess he's referred to, I think he refers to himself this way, to the climate czar. Rather appropriate reference to Russia, in the sense that I suppose these people all just expect to be obeyed, but John Kerry, sort of career ne'er-do-well, a man who's never held a job or made payroll for anybody, but has lived off productive people who actually work and produce things of value that are paid for voluntarily by other people who work and create value. His statement was about how farmers need to realize we're in a crisis and therefore they must stop growing food. Who actually is listening to these people? I don't know. I can't imagine there's any credibility left in a statement like that. I mean, it seems so preposterous to suggest that people need to starve to death in order that we don't have more carbon emissions. I suppose young people believe this. It's very easy to get young people to crusade for something like that. And this is what the wisdom of the ages tells us, that when you get to a stage where the actual battle lines are between those with governmental, state, political power, and the regular people who just want to live and be left alone to live. One of my friends said this, that the primary illness of the human species is lack of responsibility. Those who take self-responsibility are, of course, far less prone to both manipulation but also coercion by other people. In this case, right, the king of all coercive organizations is the state. And it's very important not to lose sight of these basic dynamics. The The state is allowed to use violence legally, but a lot of very heavy thinkers talked and thought and came up with the notion of natural law. An example of natural law would be you're allowed to defend yourself and be damned to any other. If the state comes to kill you, you're allowed to defend yourself. That's natural law. Natural law can and in fact must supersede state law, especially at times like this. Your sort of right to live, if the state thinks you need to stop growing food so that everybody starves because of somebody's political agenda, and they're allowed to enforce that, well then I guess you die. I guess you starve to death. If you have an ounce of good sense, you know perfectly well that that's a government of state actors that says it's your job to starve to death is by definition meant to be ignored. People who come after you to kill you, right, must necessarily be disobeyed. And so I suspect we're entering a time when a lot of people are going to have to make very, very, what will feel in their own minds like very radical decisions to ignore and sort of cast off the yoke of the very dangerous group of people who have taken over the state institutions. It seems obvious that this must be so. Can't really be otherwise. Cannot have a situation where people in charge are allowed to offer that kind of violence to the population at large. And so I suspect we're going to see real fireworks. Something along the lines of a kind of revolution. If the Donald is allowed to run again, or if he cannot be stopped from running again, which looks to be the case, and if in fact these things are pre-decided by some group of cigar-chomping, a boardroom, as it were, of people who actually orchestrate and choreograph things like elections, I suppose it's possible. It's also entirely possible that he'll get back in office so that the Russia thing can be sorted out. It seems like something like that could in fact happen. You know, that Trump was allowed to do a town hall on CNN is a sign that he's actually going to not just make a comeback, but that the deep state will allow him to make a comeback. But in any case, your job and mine is to continue to look after your family, to continue to try to do your best, try to band together with good folks, like-minded folks, people who kind of get the danger of what's taking place. And Jesus, I mean, if the money is going bad and the food supply is going bad and oil supplies are going to be cut, and if all of the worst possible outcomes come to fruition, well, you better have a plan in place long before any of that becomes necessary to, right? You don't want to be like actually building your lifeboat while you're actually abandoning ship. You want to have that in place ahead of time. And I suppose that's where my thoughts and where my mind stays more or less all the time now, day and night. I'm wondering and thinking how I can get to people and help good folks figure out ways to protect themselves so that the really hideous trouble that's unfolding let's say about to unfold, but it's not about to unfold, it is happening. And things are still relatively pleasant right now, but I suspect a series of shocks are going to change things sort of irrevocably in the what remains of the 2020s. It's going to be a wild few years. So buckle up. And to sort of close out my thoughts on moral philosophy, especially if you're a young person listening to this, the idea of having a correct moral code is not, I think, as it was portrayed, the notion of a guy with a beard behind a cloud sort of looking at you and writing down things that he'll tisk you for later, but that you need a moral philosophy that allows you to live in the world today as a winner, not as a slave, but as somebody who's valuable, who considers himself valuable enough to to defend his own life and to defend his own freedom, and that your freedom and your ability to conduct yourself in this world are worth fighting for. And that mostly the way that you fight, of course, is not by fighting. You can't really fight the state. It's a ticket to, obviously it's a ticket to a very early death. But you can foil them. You can disobey. You can sort of stonewall the kind of stupidity that, that we see now. You know, climate czar Kerry telling people we're going to stop growing food. Who exactly do these people think they are? And moreover, why would anybody listen to that kind of... Why would anybody say such a thing, but why would anybody be listening to these clowns? But if in fact they're going to use the power of the state to enforce things like, oh, you're now supposed to starve and be a good citizen, it's kind of your duty to do better than that. And a good moral philosophy helps you navigate very, very difficult situations, like the ones that we're living through today, to be sure. And so, on the one hand, it could be a boring topic, but I like touching on moral philosophy. Love the correct way of thinking. Love the correct way of managing yourself and your life and your inner world, your psychology, in such a way that you prevail. Obeying orders like it's your duty to starve means that you haven't thought through your own moral philosophy very carefully. And that's to say nothing about the fact that if the United States ever was special, and it was special because we didn't do this kind of shit. This past week, Putin made a speech about the revolution and the Bolsheviks from 1917 on, citing exactly the stupidity that's taking place in the U.S. Of course, he's completely correct, as anyone who knows anything about history is already aware. The destruction of the family, the attempt to actually destroy even the concept of male and female, which is truly bizarre. We can only hope that enough dirt wisdom still resides within the population at large, if you will, to stonewall and really place roadblocks in front of such an obviously idiotic kind of philosophy, amoral philosophy, if you will, or immoral at least. And that good people will, in the end, prevail because the truth does matter. The truth does matter. In my 50s now, I can tell you the truth matters in ways that you cannot imagine. But it's your job to go out and find out what the truth is. Not to parrot, something that you heard from a philosophy teacher or from a YouTube video or some kind of influencer, but to figure out for yourself how the world works, what things cannot be changed, what things need to be the way they are, and what small amount of agency you have over whatever corner of your life is possible to influence, not as a way to tell other people what to do, but as a way to sort of contribute your own tiny sliver of sanity to a rather upside down world right now. More later. That's enough out of me. Thanks for watching.